I'll give you one piece of advice, Donald Trump. Everybody is out for you, even your own people. Be scared. Be very afraid.
Hey, James, a bunch of primaries yesterday. Not as big as one or two surprises. A billionaire defeated the Trump and Brian Kemp endorsed Republican candidate for governor of Georgia. And I think the Democratic candidate, former Atlanta Mayor Bottoms, has a real shot now in the general. In the Senate race, the Trump candidate, Republican Congressman Collins, won over a former Tennessee football coach. But Democrat John Ossoff is going to win this race in November without a runoff. The Republican candidate faces ethical issues, and Ossoff has become a formidable candidate. Just anybody out there, if you haven't seen it, look at his speech in Atlanta a few weeks ago. One of the best takedowns of Trump that I've seen. I think the push for him as a 28 nominee is a little bit premature, but he has Georgia Republicans on their heels. And I think you have to go back to the 90s, James, when Georgia last elected a Democratic governor and a senator without a runoff. But, the D's are on the run in Georgia. And the only other election I would refer to is one that worries me and saddens me, and that's the mayor of Washington, D.C., that elected a Democratic socialist. And for better or worse, it's actually for worse. We have to deal a lot with the federal government here, and she's going to make it harder.
Yeah, so let's talk about Georgia. The first thing is that the gubernatorial Collins was going to win before Trump got involved. Okay, he was always ahead, probably solidified it somewhat.
Yeah,
the gubernatorial candidate is a right wing populist insurgent, worth a lot of money. I think that Georgia speaks to. And remember, Louisiana has a Republican runoff coming on June 27th, I think. And the establishment candidate is a Congressman named Julia Letlow, who's endorsed by Trump and endorsed by Jeff Landry. I think there's a real chance John Fleming wins that race. I really do. And I've called around, and I'm actually kind of friends with the Fleming people. And the data is inconclusive, but it's going to be a very low turnout election. And what you saw in Washington, D.C. is nobody came to vote, so the ideological candidate won.
Yeah.
I think that could happen in Louisiana. I think that Ossoff, I agree with you totally. He's not going to be a runoff. I don't think they're going to come within 5 points of Ossoff. I think he's clearly one of the more approved candidates. J. Mart had, I thought, a really good article between Ossoff and Warnock. The talent level of the United States Senators from Georgia is all-time high. It's really high. Remember, we had bumpers in David Pryor. You had different places where you had, really talented senators from a state.
Oh, God. Jackson and Magnuson for delivering. I mean,
yeah. But this is, for modern politics, the talent level of the two Georgia senators is pretty damn high.
Yeah, that's right up there with Virginia. I mean, it's really impressive.
It is. And Georgia is, I think, come November, is going to be a powder blue state. I really do. I think we're going to win. We're going to win the Senate. We're going to win the governorship, and we're probably going to win the state house. And the Republicans we're going to do a redistricting in the state house, and they pull back. I don't know if it's been made public. They pull back because they're scared if they poach other Republicans that they could lose those districts. I mean, there's real fear that's gripping the Georgia Republican Party right now. I can promise you.
Boy, and is really important, particularly to hold on to it for 4 more years, because it is, again, a gerrymandered state. They can pick up, just with honest redistricting, a couple seats at least in Georgia.
You're right, and the 2030 elections are going to be huge, because that's going to determine, what happened to us after 2010 was about a disaster.
Right.
But,
James, I just to switch subjects a little bit. Trump's contempt for institutions, it never ends. It never. I don't want to say it never ceases to amaze, because it doesn't amaze. It's there, but after he tapped New York Uber lawyer Jay Clayton to be the director of national intelligence, instead of that really just dreadful hatchet man, Bill Pulte, the most unqualified man ever to be nominated for a post like that, Republicans said, no, you can't do that. So, I mean, Clayton also lacks intelligence experience, but he's better than than Pulte. So's my golden retriever. But he pulls Trump pulls a fast one, which he probably will undo, maybe even by the time we get on this air, saying, wait a minute, hold off on any confirmation for the director of national intelligence, showing his contempt for that post, until you pass the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act is a voter suppression act. It's not going to happen. But if you needed just another clue, June 17th clue of Donald Trump's character, I give you that, James.
So my understanding, and you'd know this better than I do, but that is statutory requirement that the director of national intelligence has to have intelligence experience. Right. And for Clayton, the argument is, well, he was a U.S. attorney; they could prosecute people who compromise intelligence. That's the best argument they can come up with.
It's
It doesn't strike me as overly conclusive.
It's specious. You know what? The only thing these Trump does well, he will name someone dreadful. I mean, Bill Pulte was just an absolute disgrace. And then when they name someone else who's not good but better than that, they say, well, we've done better. Remember his first nominee for Attorney General was
Matt Gaetz?
Matt Gaetz, who was on the verge of being charged with sex trafficking and campaign finance fraud. And then he withdrew him, and they named Pam Bondi. People said, well, that's better. Now we got Pam Bondi. Well, I think Clayton is a new Pam Bondi, but he is better than Pulte.
He's going to have trouble getting confirmed.
Yeah.
I mean, Susan Collins can't wait to vote against him.
Well, the one that I think is the key, I agree with that, but Blanche. I mean, Blanche is the key, and we'll see if people like Tom Tillis, who I think is Johnny Tate, look, I expect Tom Tillis to vote for tax cuts, to vote for higher defense spending, to vote conservatively on social issues. He is a conservative, but he has stood up on the issues of integrity this year, starting with Jay Powell. Todd Blanche is his critical test. I mean, if you really believe in integrity, there's no place more important than the Department of Justice. And I think Todd Blanche would be the most disreputable nominee for Attorney General that we've ever seen. He would fall on the Harry Doherty, John Mitchell category.
I couldn't agree more. It's I'll just say this and I don't dwell anymore. We talked about how bad it was going to be after the 2024 election. And we say the same thing, and I really mean it. We had no idea. We just couldn't. We couldn't imagine. Couldn't imagine losing a fucking war. Happy birthday, America! You just lost. You're a loser, and you got to be honest. We got to be honest with ourselves. We can never return to the greatness we had unless we honest about the assessment of why we are. We lost. Period.
Can you imagine how excited Jefferson would have been at the fight on the South Lawn Sunday night, though, James? I mean, that's what that was all about in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah. But I like is Eric Trump asking the guy if it's rigged and who can he bet on? It literally they caught him on the cell phone saying it's rigged. Who should I bet on? Everything they do, everything is a grift. Everything.
Of course it is. When Trump said he didn't care about Ukraine, he doesn't, but he cares a lot about the Middle East. Why? Because that's where he makes money. That's where the family makes a whole lot of money. It's about money. It's not about national security. It's not about Israel. It's not about bombs. It's about Trump making money. We all know that the food we eat affects the way we feel, but the air we breathe, picking up on your point, does too. We've all woken up feeling sluggish, stuffed up, or distracted by an odor that seems to come from nowhere. There's nothing more frustrating, and it used to be a big issue until we discovered the Air Doctor air purifier. Now, as soon as it gets turned on, you can breathe easier, and after finding out about them from their stellar reviews, we knew it was the answer to so many nagging problems. With the Air Doctor, there are fewer, stronger odors, cleaner air for your kids and pets, and reduced allergy symptoms. Life gets so much better with all the pollen and other junk being taken out of the air, especially in places like Washington, where there are allergens everywhere. And that's not even including some of the politicians. So how does it work? Air Doctor's powerful 3-stage filtration captures extremely small particles about 100 times smaller than what typical air purifiers can remove. That's incredible, and it means that it captures airborne contaminants you don't want to be breathing in, like dust, pollen, mold spores, pet dander, wildfire smoke, bacteria, viruses, odors, smoke, ozone, and volatile organic compounds. Yuck. Better yet, it has a whisper quiet operation, so it's not loud like others on the market. And with its auto mode feature, it ensures optimal air 24/7. It has even changed filter reminders so there's no more guesswork. 98% of Air Doctor customers say their home air feels cleaner, safer, and healthier. So it's no surprise it won Newsweek Reader's Choice Awards for the best air purifier. Don't wait for better living with cleaner and purer air. Head to airdoctorpro.com and use the promo code WARROOM to get up to $300 off today. Air Doctor comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee plus a 3-year warranty at $85 value, free. Get this exclusive podcast only offer now at airdoctorpro.com. That's AIRDOCTORPRO.com and use the promo code War Room.
I want to add something. So, in my time in international political consultant, one of my literally favorite destinations was Buenos Aires, Argentina. If you didn't know what Buenos Aires means in Spanish, well, it means good air. So a whole city was named after good air. So you owe it to yourself to have good air.
Hey, James, our guest is the fabulous David Sanger, the eminent national security correspondent for the New York Times. He always elevates us, and I'm sure he will really elevate us today. He has been following this Iran issue so closely. David, when I read the MOU, I think they got to be ecstatic in Tehran. I mean, basically, they potentially get $300 billion of assets or of investments sent to them. They have their frozen assets are going to be unfrozen. Now, what they give up? They gave up, or they're going to open the Straits of Hormuz. That was open up until February 28th and Trump's war, and they're going to pledge not to get a nuclear weapon, which they've been saying all the way back to the Obama deal in 2015.
Yeah, no, a lot earlier than that. They agreed not to do a nuclear weapon when they ratified the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in 1970. You were probably writing about it at the time, Al.
I was following you, David.
You forgot about it. I was 10 years old.
But this is, I know there's still negotiations in the next 60 days. This looks like a pretty good deal for Iran.
So, the oddity of this agreement, first of all, we've all been reading versions of the MOU, but every one of the versions we've been reading is somewhat different. I don't know how many of them you've gotten. I've probably gotten 15 or 20.
I've only gotten 2 or 3, and they are a little bit different.
Yeah, they are different. So, number one is we clearly don't all have the final copy yet, or if we do have the final copy, we don't know which one it is. Number two, what kind of operation is that? Right? I mean, if you're the administration, you want to solve this problem by publishing what the final deal is. Number three, the president, as recently as this morning, suggested, well, maybe it wasn't final, even though he made it clear it was signed last Sunday. Number four, they're supposed to hold a formal signing in Switzerland, and it's not clear right now that either the vice president or the Iranians, but especially the Iranians, want a picture of them signing this whole thing. For the Iranians, it's signing an agreement with the administration that just killed the supreme leader at the opening of the war. And for Vance, whether you want to have a photograph of you signing an agreement with the Iranians that could be used in a future campaign. I don't know, James. What do you think? What's the utility of a photo like that?
Look, it's an instrument of surrender. No one wants to be caught signing an instrument of surrender. That's my
Right.
view.
You
Right.
remember that moment where Mike Pompeo signed the deal that the Trump administration put together in Afghanistan for the withdrawal of U.S.
Oh,
troops?
yeah.
And he was haunted by that photo of him and the Taliban leader for some time, still is.
David, I want to still go. I know it's old. I want to go back to your interview with when Trump called you. I
Yeah.
think you were in London on Sunday. I found that more than a little bizarre. I mean, he said, among other things, "Don't worry, the Straits of Hormuz will be toll free." But I guess it's still possible that they will not be fee free. I don't know what the distinction is there. At least that's what the Iranians say. He tried
I can tell you the difference, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, and he said the United States, this is what really might have to patrol the entire Gulf in return for 20% of their revenue. That exceeds Dick Cheney and the neocons' wildest dreams. I can't imagine it's not going to get resistance. It wouldn't get resistance from Gulf states, not to mention Americans. Was this
How about the MAGA folks who
no,
didn't want us?
delusional?
How about the MAGA folks who didn't want us to be engaged over a long term in the Middle East anymore, right?
Right,
Wasn't that part of America First? Now, it was an interesting phone call. First of all, I didn't know it was coming, right?
right.
Had no notice. He called. Um, Second, I think it tells you may recall, you guys, that it was only a month ago that he was accusing me of treasonous activity
Well,
for
I thought he was going to
questioning.
execute you, David. I was petrified.
Yeah. Well, I didn't see you guys bailing me out. I don't know. I don't understand.
I'd have
So,
been.
okay. Um, so, I think it tells you that he's very sensitive about the coverage of this, and he's sensitive about the coverage of it in the New York Times, his hometown newspaper, as he frequently refers to it, because I think he recognizes that we cover these issues intently, and the rest of the media's may well be reading us with some care. Um, but the third thing that I think was notable about it was the president was basically saying, um, I think the Iranians are going to go ahead and do this, that the second agreement, which is actually far more important than the one they're signing now, that will be the details of the nuclear agreement, he thought wouldn't be that hard, that they have actually worked out on the side what the big details of that would be, and that he could get it done in the 60 days. And if he didn't, he would either go back to war, which he again suggested yesterday, or he said the United States would provide this kind of mercenary patrolling of the Middle East in return for 20% of all oil revenues, and American taxpayers would get rich from it. Well, I'm not sure, as you guys aren't, that that's really what the way Americans envision using American power, which is to say, to sell it off to the highest bidder for patrol rights.
Absolutely. Going all right, this 60 days in the negotiations over the nuclear issue. The one thing he's adamant about, I don't think he knows a whole lot about the details, to put it mildly. Neither do his negotiators. I saw Jared Kushner went to Oak Hill to try to get a briefing on. He should have gone to David Sanger. But I think the one thing he's absolutely determined on is to be able to say that he got a better deal than Barack Obama's deal in 2015. That actually worked, as you've reported, pretty darn well.
Hmm.
They gave up a lot of enrichment. They weren't adding, they weren't progressing until Trump pulled out of it. Why would the Iranians now, having taken our best hit and survived, agree to something more radical than that?
Well, they haven't yet. I mean, if you look at these 14 points, they're very general on the question of what happens to the nuclear program. That all gets kicked to the later negotiation, right? The one that's supposed to start on Friday and run for 60 days, although we've already heard Secretary of State Rubio say, well, it could be 90, could be longer. I think the Iranians recognize a few things. If they can get the blockade undone, which would happen immediately under this initial agreement, then they're going to be able to resume their sales to China, which takes 90% of their exports. If they resume their sales to China, they're getting income once again on a serious level. And so the U.S. would be giving up some of its leverage before it goes through the nuclear negotiation. It would still have some leverage left, and that leverage would include the ability to uh, not deliver or not unfreeze the frozen $15 billion, or not relieve some of the sanctions that have been on for years on Iran. But it would end the immediate economic crisis in Iran that the blockade is causing. So why the president is sequencing it this way seems a little bit strange to me.
The other thing, David, is you could argue that they now have leverage greater than their threat or possibility to create a nuclear weapon, and that is they can shut down some of the world's economy just by closing the straits, which they had never done prior to this war.
That's right. That's right. They've found their superpower, and in many ways, it is more useful to them than a nuclear weapon, which if you use, you know what the result is going to be, especially if Israel is sitting there with 100 of its own. And of course, we've got our arsenal. So the fact of the matter is, closing the Strait of Hormuz is a permanent superpower that the Iranians have. They live there. They could mine it at any moment. They could send their drones up to threaten tankers at any moment. And we would have to send in a naval force from afar. So, to the Iranians, they're not really giving up their sovereign control. Now, this preliminary agreement only forces them to give up tolls or any other fees for 60 days. They have said now, well, we may not charge tolls, but we may charge fees, as you referred to before, Al.
Right.
And what's the difference? A toll is, what you pay when you're going down the highway with your Easy Pass, right, to use the facility. But a fee may be an environmental fee, a docking fee, a safety fee. I mean, there are all kinds of things that they could tack on
Safe
and
passage. Yeah.
safer, right, that are just reimbursing Iran for the costs of keeping the place open, mines swept, things like that.
James Carville.
So here we are. Is it fair to say we just lost a war? We just lost.
It is certainly fair to say that if you compared what we have accomplished to the president's statement of objectives on that video the night on February 28th we start the war, that he hasn't accomplished almost any of those objectives. I count one that he's accomplished: degrading the missile program and sinking the not very large Iranian Navy. But the fact of the matter is that we have not accomplished those goals. And it was news analyses I wrote that kept making that point, that led the president to erupt at me on Air Force One a month ago.
So it seems that in foreign policy goals, the Iranians always dreamt of driving a wedge between the U.S. and the Israelis. I think they've done that. I think U.S.-Israeli relations right now are pretty bad.
Yep.
The chief domestic policy goal is always, with every regime, to consolidate their hold on power. There wasn't, as I understand it, correct me or expound on it, there's an opposition in Iran. It's more than just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And they're completely demoralized by this because the regime has strengthened its hand by this war. We're dealing with a stronger regime today than we did on February 15th.
It's even more complex than that, James, that the protesters who heard the president say help is on the way must feel abandoned because the president's just signed a deal with the Ayatollah's son and the IRGC. But the hardliners in Iran think the Iranians have given up too much by going into this nuclear negotiation at all and by suspending their control over the Gulf, and see this as a sellout. So their politics in some way mirrors ours, right? You've got the president's own party full of Iran hardliners who are very suspicious of what he's doing here. And then you've got the left saying he never should have started the war to begin with. So yeah, in both sides, this is pretty unpopular. And you're wondering why the U.S. has not published that accord yet? Because the moment they publish it, everybody's unhappy. The Iranians are unhappy for some things that it requires them to do. There are American hardliners who are going to look at it and say, there's no mention of missiles in here. There's no mention of supporting the protesters. There's no mention of cutting off help to Hezbollah and Hamas. And the Israelis are unhappy because they're afraid that they are being sucked into a ceasefire that they didn't even get involved in the negotiation over. So it's a prescription for making all sides unhappy, which happens often in compromise documents. Just doesn't happen in unilateral surrenders, which is what, of course, the president unconditional surrenders, which is, of course, what the president um, uh, wanted to go do. So.
Okay, so we didn't have unconventional surrender in Vietnam. We lost
That's
the
right.
Vietnam War. We just
That
lost the war. Okay, that
right, right.
You
We also
know,
didn't have unconventional. We also didn't have surrender in Iraq,
right. So we're not
right?
going to furl a
Korea.
battleship in the Persian Gulf and have a signing ceremony.
That's it. And you've heard the president himself complain about this. You remember when he renamed the Department of Defense to the Department of War? He said when it was called the Department of War, we used to win wars.
We just lost. We just lost.
Cause and effect, right?
Happy to. So I would say this to our listeners: I won't know what's in the deal when David Sanger tells me what's in the deal. I'm going to
All
live
right,
no
I like
different.
that.
So I'm
I
just
like
waiting
that.
on your story to explain the memorandum of understanding to us.
Yeah, I certainly like that approach.
Okay, Al.
What Bibi is Netanyahu is obviously furious. He faces an election. He is a guy he's trumping, and that he'll do almost anything for survival. What might he do now to try to sabotage some of this? And what leverage that we would actually exercise do we have in return?
Great question. So to sabotage this, he could resume the attacks on Hezbollah,
Right.
or he might just wait for Hezbollah to unleash some kind of missile attack, something, and then say what he's doing is in self-defense, which would probably be his better course of action. But the prime minister has made very clear that he does not consider himself bound by this agreement since he wasn't involved in negotiations of this agreement. And, there have obviously been a number of heated calls between him and the president on just this topic.
What leverage what could Trump do if he really does try to sabotage this? What leverage, I imagine all kinds of things he could do, but what might we realistically do?
Um, he could realistically attempt to cut off U.S. military aid to Israel. But I don't think he's going to do that. I don't think Donald Trump is going to go do that. I don't think that his own constituency would ever stand for that.
So if you're Bibi Netanyahu, why not go ahead and sabotage it?
He's already started.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw that effort even take place Saturday and Sunday, and the president in his call to me sort of acknowledged that he was deeply upset with Netanyahu on just that topic.
David, the world is your expertise about everything. So let me just quickly turn to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Trump basically said again the other day, I don't really care about Ukraine. Then he sort of had a different view the next day. That was looking pretty good. I mean, Ukraine really has been looking pretty good, and Russia looks like they're in some trouble.
Yeah.
Will we supply them with those defense missiles that they so desperately need right now?
So the president has been pretty clear. He has said we will sell things to the Europeans, and then they can go resell them to whoever they want. If they want to give them to the Ukrainians, that's up to them. But the U.S. would not do it directly. And he has not provided the Ukrainians directly at any moment. So I don't see any particular reason to suspect that the president's now going to come to the aid of the Ukrainians. I think what the president does want to do is normalize his relationship with Russia, just as he attempted on the trip we were all on last month to normalize the relationship with China. And he has always seen Ukraine as an impediment to that normalization.
And Russia is in trouble now, aren't they? I mean, economically and even militarily.
They are in trouble. The Ukrainians have been very effective at hitting their oil supplies. The Ukrainians have been very effective at hitting a good number of their aircraft, some of their missile factories. And last month, for the first time, the Russians actually lost territory a little bit in the Donbass. So we're seeing things turn. I don't think that they're necessarily turning as dramatically as the Ukrainians have in mind. And let's remember, Russia remains a nuclear power. And while Putin has not threatened to use nuclear weapons in recent times, the 2022 nuclear crisis, where we came that close to that, I recounted at great length in New Cold Wars. I think most Americans were sort of tuned out to what was going on those 2 weeks in October of 2022. I think we could risk going back to days like that.
David, one final question, turning back to James. In previous administrations, there were really important foreign policy advisors, Kissinger, Brzezinski, even most recently, Jake Sullivan, Blinken. Who plays that role, if anyone? Who does Trump listen to on these issues?
Well, on the most recent ones that we've been discussing today, it's been Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, who have been negotiating, first with Russia and the Middle East, now with Iran. It's been Vance and Rubio. It's been the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. But it's a very small, tight group. And one of the concerns is that we may not be seeing as many new ideas and fresh ideas coming in as we need to.
James.
So, David, I'm just watching the body language and everything around the summit they had in Evian in France. I think the Europeans are just fine with us not playing a big role in Ukraine. And I think they're going to play a bigger, eventually the war is going to end. And we're not going to have much say so. And I think they feel like they got the upper hand now.
Well, I'm not sure it's going to end that quickly because, at the end of the day, Russia's a much larger force. But the Europeans, this is the most fundamental split we have seen between Europe and the United States in many, many years. And it's the largest we have seen because we have a fundamental disagreement, not just over policy, but over the question of whether or not the United States takes the role as the forefront defender of democracy around the world. And clearly that's not the number one priority of this administration. The number one priority is the one the president described in our interview in January when he talked about expanding the territorial footprint of the United States and pursuing our interests, even if that puts us in opposition to our closest allies.
So, I want to make a point. You can comment on it. The world is going to change this coming fall. It's not that far because there are going to be elections in Israel and there's going to be elections in the United States. And what happens after those elections is going to be considerably different than what we're having right now, I think. I think these are very consequential elections coming up.
I think they are, but interesting question about the degree to which they will be fought on the issues we've been discussing today, or whether they'll be fought largely on the president's management of the domestic economy. Now, there's a lot of overlap gas prices, inflation are all been linked to the war here. And I think that's one of the reasons the president was so eager to get a preliminary agreement that just opened the strait again. Remember, the strait wasn't closed before the war. It was closed as a result of the war. And that's where I think his first interest was. And it explains why he's lost so much interest in managing the nuclear program.
Well, David, I can't thank you enough. Albert, what a great job. I was so delighted when I got a text that David was going to be on the show. It really jumped out of my skin. And I looked you up in the Wikipedia because I can't remember a time when you weren't writing. And of course, it was 1982 when you started, and so time immemorial being defined as that time to which the mind of man runneth not to the contrary.
Well, that could have been.
James, ask his wife.
Yeah, right. When did Hunt start writing?
It was the McKinley administration, I think.
I think he scratched it out on the marble tablets. And
the good news for Hunt is McKinley's back. His picture's up in the Oval Office. He's like Mr. Tariffs. He took over, he won the Spanish-American War. So, if you wait long enough, Al, it all comes around again.
Oh, man, I'm waiting and I'm hoping. But I'll tell you something. Every time we have David Sanger on this program, we learn a lot. It really, I now have a totally different sense of what's going on over there than I did a half hour ago.
I'm waiting for him to tell me what's in that MOU.
Yeah, well, I'm waiting to read the final version, right? One day we're going to hold an MOU burning party here to get rid of all the old versions that we printed out.
Hey, how important is maintaining a healthy weight for our quality of life, James?
Well, look at Trump and you'll see how important it is. He can't get out of the chair. He can't say one thing. If you want to look like that, go ahead. Weight's not important. But I don't think you want to look like him.
If you've had trouble losing weight, join the club. Enter Weight Loss by Hers. It's designed to support you in reaching your goals, and Hers now offers access to an affordable range of FDA-approved GLP-1 medications, including the Wegovy pill and the Wegovy pen. The results are incredible, and it's an amazing and effective tool for you or those you care about. With Wegovy at HEU Jesus Christ. With eGovy at HEU can RS lose up to 20% or more of your body weight when combined with diet and exercise. Now, it helps you regulate your appetite and to eat less and to keep weight off. Plus, Wegovy is the first ever GLP-1 pill for weight loss. That means no needles. Everything is 100% online. And Hers connects you with a licensed provider who will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your medication is delivered right to your door. No insurance necessary. Now, Weight Loss by Hers even goes beyond medication by offering access to 24/7 messaging with your care team and tons of in-app lifestyle and nutrition tips like recipes, meal plans, fitness videos, sleep content, and more. Even better, with a range of affordable GLP-1 options, Hers makes it simple to find an approach that fits your needs and your budget. If eligible, you'll get a treatment plan personalized to you and unlimited dosage changes as needed. It's weight loss designed to work with your life. So are you ready to reach your goals? Visit forhers.com/warroom to get personalized, affordable care that gets you. That's forhers.com/warroom. Again, forhers.com/warroom. Weight Loss by Hers is not available in all 50 states. Wegovy is the registered trademark of Novo Nordisk AS. To get started and learn more, including important safety information, Wegovy clinical study information, and restrictions, visit forhers.com. The link is in our show note. Hey, James, our guest is Devlin Barrett, the prize-winning New York Times Justice Department reporter who has written a terrific new book, Department of Revenge: How Trump Took Control of American Justice. Let's start with the latest news. California Governor Gavin Newsom's charge that Trump is politically targeting him and his wife. Justice replies this was an investigation, mainly a tax issue, and his wife, all done by California U.S. attorneys, no politics. I'd be inclined to give them the benefit of the doubt if it weren't for Jay Powell and James Comey and Letitia James and Mark Kelly and the mayor of Newark. I can keep going on and on just from your book, all, politically directed. From what you know so far, is the Newsom case different?
From what I know so far, I would say it's not an obvious sign of, sort of the revenge agenda yet, but I think we still need to learn a lot more about this investigation. For example, the FBI agents just went out asking witnesses questions about this, 7 or so days ago. We just found out as reporters, we just found out about this investigative activity, a couple days ago. I'd like to pretend I'm omniscient and can tell you exactly everything that's going inside the department in real time. But the truth is, I actually think I need to figure out a little more before we can make a meaningful call on that.
Well, when you figure it out, I'll know what I think about it. Pam Bondi was the attorney general for over a year. But from the Department of Revenge, my takeaway is Todd Blanche, Trump's criminal lawyer, deputy attorney general, and AG nominee. He really has run the Justice Department for the last year and a half.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that's what the book shows, frankly. And in ways that are bewildering at times to a lot of the people who work there. People described to me in reporting for the book, people described to me, being in Blanche's office and it just being a kind of, international airport lounge of revenge cases, strange policy choices, firings. People describe going in there to talk about some minor legal issue and then getting sucked into like a long, weird conversation about transgender issues. It's a strange place now, the way everything seems to flow through the DAG's office, and the Attorney General's office, even when Bondi was there, was often not in the loop.
Let me just take one and give me. I'm just going to take a little bit of extra time on this to see if I have it right. Trump sues the IRS for $10 billion for the leak of his tax returns. It was really a sham, or at least a suit that wasn't going to succeed. It was filed too late. A similar suit by the CEO of Citadel was settled with an apology. But in the deal cut by Todd Blanche, Trump dropped this suit that he wasn't going to get any money for and got in return a $1.8 billion slush fund for his allies. And what a former IRS commissioner tells me is an unprecedented deal where he and his family cannot be audited for current or previous tax returns. Is that a fair summary?
It is. And I think the one thing I would add to just make clear is that part of why these cases are so alarming to people inside and outside government is these aren't real settlements. These aren't real deals. This is one person essentially dictating the terms of what he wants the government to give him. And the only, check on that really is his own, sense of political cost. And so he's essentially these suits and these, demands for money. He's basically making a demand that he will decide how it gets fulfilled. And that's the real, ethical, absurdity of this process.
And on the tax audit immunity, unless it's happened today, Judge Williams, a federal judge, still could undo this, right?
Yes, although Blanche has made a very interesting argument with significant consequences if anyone buys the argument, which is that the tax immunity deal is somehow separate and completely distinct from the settlement and just essentially a decree made by him, the acting attorney general. If that claim holds up, if that position holds up, then you would have a situation where, in theory, no judge can even poke around in this. Which I think most people would find that a sort of absurdly unethical arrangement. But you can see them trying to wall off. You can see the Trump administration trying to wall off from any scrutiny or challenge the tax provision specifically.
Well, I hope the senators on that Judiciary Committee pay more attention to this than the slush fund, because the slush fund they've got an answer to. I don't necessarily believe them, but this one may be more complicated for them. James Carville. So
My view toward government was best summed out by State Senator A.L. Rapollet of Lafourche Parish, Louisiana, who said he was for pretty good government. Okay, I'm not a. You understand there's a pretty wide strike zone. You call it. I thought it was utterly stunning in Maggie and Johnson's book that Todd Blanche was a deputy attorney general, Planbond was attorney general, and they were in a political meeting on how to handle Epstein.
Sure.
At which time, the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, I think that's a Senate-confirmed position, but it's a big deal, said what we need to do is petition a court to open the Epstein files. They're going to deny it, and then we can blame the Democrats. I found that to be, shocking. I didn't just fucking read this. I read it 3 more times. You covered it. How unprecedented is that I couldn't see Eric Holt. I couldn't see Alberto Gonzalez. I couldn't even see Edwin Meese in something that nakedly political being AG. Am I missing something?
Majority.
I mean, look, I think this is the Epstein case. What happened there is an extreme example. But I do think sometimes the Justice Department can look to the courts to sort of bail them out of their own problems. I think with Epstein, however, what you have is a completely almost completely self-created, self-worsening, mismanaged problem. And I think you see that that meeting is certainly one of the prime examples of that. But I would argue as Blanche manages that issue, they repeatedly bungle it. I have a long description in my book of the whole binder fiasco, because the binder fiasco to me was so telling that they thought that this couldn't possibly boomerang on them. They thought that props were all that mattered and the reality was irrelevant. And all of that came back to bite them. And I think so much of what you see in the arc of the Epstein saga is a bunch of people who don't know what they're doing, who are not really trying to do the things they claim they are trying to do, and just sort of expecting, that nothing bad will come to them from all this, and they're proven wrong over and over and over.
So Devlin, Monday, I guess it was, I had cataract surgery. Thank God, it's not much to it, but there's a limited number of people that can do that. That's a high skill set to be an eye surgeon. But a little bit I know about being a lawyer, it's a high skill set to be a career prosecutor in the DOJ. You just can't go get somebody from a law firm and say, okay, you're a career prosecutor. I mean, there's a certain amount of knowledge, experience, dealing with courts, writing briefs. Of the 100 best lawyers that started out in the Justice Department, how many are gone now? I mean, if they had a talent drain now?
Right. I would say it's a great question. I would say at least 50 are gone.
God damn, really?
And it may be closer to 80, really, realistically. I have a chapter in the book called "The Worst Lawyers Money Can Buy," and it's really about how they have brought on some comically ill-equipped lawyers, particularly when it comes to what matters most in the DOJ, which is criminal prosecution. There are lawyers making absurd decisions on indictments, absurd decisions on grand jury presentations. There are lawyers whose ignorance is only surpassed by their ambition, and they are promoting people who are tremendously green, and people who are frankly tremendously eager to do what they're told. And you're seeing it's one of the reasons why many of this revenge campaign falls apart in the court often.
So I'll turn it over and make a point and ask you to comment. When you see something, such and such versus the United States, or the United States versus such and such, the people representing the United States is the Justice Department. That's our lawyers.
Correct.
All right. And frankly, from what you wrote and what you're saying, our lawyers are not particularly good right now. I mean, it's not like a Brendan Sullivan or Seth Waxman or something like that. For the most part, they're pretty average right now.
Oh, I think there's a lot of average. I think there's quite a lot of below average. And you see
Right.
them lowering because they're having such a hard time hiring anyone to take these jobs because good lawyers understand how precarious the Justice Department situation is right now, that they are lowering the standards for hiring lawyers just to try to get warm bodies in seats. These used to be not long ago. I say used to be, we're talking 2 years ago. These used to be very prestigious jobs that, the elite lawyers would take these jobs knowing that they were not going to be paid what their friends at the big firms were getting paid, but believing in the mission and its interest. In many cases, it's interesting, exciting work and very meaningful to them.
Right.
That is widely eroded now, and what you're getting is people coming in who really don't have much experience, are willing to do things that the people with experience are not willing to do, and you're seeing often disastrous results.
Yeah, it's out about just make when these top tier law schools, these law review students, they can the Justice Department will recruit their fair share against even the best Wall Street firms. They're not getting anything now. We're getting
Absolutely. And I'd be the first person to argue that in some ways, the old way was maybe a little too focused on the top law schools.
right.
Maybe you need a little more of a mix, but
Yeah,
this is not mix. We're not talking about mix anymore. We're talking about people who don't know what they're doing in many
But a
cases.
law review student at University of Minnesota, University of Alabama is not interested in. It might be just as good as a law review student at Yale.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, he's not going to be interested. Al, to you.
That's right.
James mentioned that Maggie Haberman, Jonathan Swan piece on the meeting, the Situation Room, and let's ask the judges to release the grand jury transcripts, then we can blame them. The other thing that Blanche did at that meeting, he said, "I'll go talk to Ghislaine Maxwell," which he did for 2 days. I've read most of that transcript. I ran a couple of bureaus in Washington, and if any reporter of mine had come back with those kind of questions, I'd have sent them back to school. They were so bad. But more importantly, within a week, she was transferred to this minimum security prison, the closest thing we know in America to a posh prison. And she's a sex offender, and they're not supposed to be sex offenders there. I mean, that's a deal that I just can't tell you how that just drives me crazy. What justification do they offer for that deal?
So Blanche has tried to justify it by saying she faced threats. He hasn't gone beyond that. He hasn't really explained that. But look, I think that transfer, the public reaction to that transfer, I think makes all the sense in the world because everyone looks at that as, she said on the record that Trump didn't do anything wrong. And then within days, she's given much better conditions of confinement. She's sent to a nicer place.
Yeah.
You don't have to. I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist to sort of parse out what happened there. But the official explanation is that she got better conditions because she was endangered. I will tell you, as someone who's covered the Bureau of Prisons for a long time, there's a lot of people who are endangered and they're transferred to worse conditions. That is far more often the case, that when you are facing threats, you end up essentially in some version of isolation to protect you, and isolation is worse. Ghislaine Maxwell got the exact opposite. She got better treatment.
You don't comment on this, but as you know, I wrote that I would like to start an office pool on what day she'll be pardoned or commuted after the midterm elections, so anybody can join. Talk about the political litmus test that they establish for hiring, Devlin.
Right. So one of the things I get into in the book is from day one of the new administration, they are screening and trying to get pro-Trump people even into civil service jobs that are specifically by law not supposed to have that kind of litmus test. So, for example, one of the guys they are trying to get to, take over the deputy director job at the FBI, which is a civil position. It's not a political position historically. He has a bizarre conversation with the Trump transition official who asks him stuff like, what's your favorite Trump policy? When was the last time you voted for a Democrat? All these baldly political questions. And because that guy is no dummy, he immediately responds, you can't really ask me those questions. That's not how this works. But that type of questioning in their hiring process, sources tell me is going on all the time. and it's going on for career jobs. And they're trying to specifically find people who are pro-Trump, will praise Trump in their job interviews, and will sort of adopt this new brand, this new definition of their oath to the Constitution. One of the things that is most upsetting to the people in the department that I talk to is that, whether it's Todd Blanche or his deputy Emil Bovey or others, they all insist that if you take an oath to the Constitution, that means you have to do whatever the president wants. And that's the sum total of what your oath to the Constitution means. And I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to who are just horribly offended by that idea that their pledge to be loyal to their country is being warped by this administration into some sort of loyalty oath to the president himself.
I'll tell you who else would have been offended: Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and James Madison and George Washington. But tell us about Erez Ruvini. I hope I pronounced that name correctly.
Right. So Erez Ruvini was, I should say, a managing lawyer in the immigration litigation office of the Justice Department. It's a fairly obscure office, but it's a very important one, especially during Trump administrations, because immigration is such a big part of what Trump wants to do when he's in charge of the government. And so Erez Ruvini is drawn into the legal fights over sending, 200 immigrants to a high security prison in El Salvador called CICOT. And they're sent there without due process. They're sent there, in the dark of the night while, those people's lawyers are still trying to get in front of a judge to try and, stop this. And in the course of preparing for those cases, Erez Ruvini's in a meeting where Emil Bovey, who is Todd Blanche's right-hand man at the time, says, we may find ourselves in a situation where we tell a judge, to fuck off. And to the lawyers in the room, that's a pretty shocking and awful statement. There's sort of an immediate sense of alarm on the people who hear that message. And then, lo and behold, within a matter of days, in fact, you can see from Erez Ruvini's texts and other evidence that the Justice Department is essentially not telling a judge what they're really doing and trying to essentially get all those people loaded off the plane before the judge can stop them. And the judge tries to stop them and fails. But I would argue that the record of evidence really weighs strongly toward showing that, in fact, the department the administration set out to keep the judge in the dark long enough to force those people out of the country.
And sadly, Emil Bove is on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. Anybody who voted for him ought to pay a price at the polls. Final question before turning back to James. These people complain about, well, look, there was all about weaponization in the Biden Justice Department. The Biden Justice Department, and I have some criticisms, they indicted the senior Democratic United States Senator, Menendez of New Jersey. They indicted the Democratic mayor of New York City, and they indicted the president's own son. In 17 months, I haven't seen a lot of Republican indictments with this crowd.
Well, that's exactly right. And I think one of the things I try to lay out in the book is, look, the Justice Department has never been and probably never will be perfect, partly because no one agrees on exactly what a perfect Justice Department would be doing. But I think it's very clear that the department during the Biden administration was, in the main, trying to keep politics out of its prosecutorial decisions. And this department in the Trump administration is repeatedly taking orders on prosecution decisions directly from the White House, directly from the president, and directly from Stephen Miller. And when the White House doesn't like what the department is doing, people in the Justice Department get fired over that.
Yes.
And the message is loud and clear. And one of the points I try to make in the book is that the firing of all these people, it's more than 200 people who've been fired for essentially their having worked on cases that the Trump administration didn't like. The problem with firing all those people, the greater problem with firing all those people, is not, the civil service protections that those people deserve and have made an argument for in court. It's that you're sending a message, a chilling message to everyone who remains, that they either do what they're told or they're out. And that is the great harm, because if the workforce comes to believe that they have to do whatever they're told no matter what, you will get more bad decisions. You will get more bad actions by the Justice Department.
James?
So, concluding question is this: the Bible teaches a lot. One of my favorite sayings is, "This too shall pass." Okay, it's not a permanent condition. How long,
oh Lord, how long?
let's assume that the new administration comes in 2029, and it's clear the Justice Department is deteriorated. I mean, significantly. How long would it take to get it back? I mean, how long would it take to rehire, get people in, trained? What kind of timeline? I know there's no definite answer, but you think it'll be quicker than people think or longer than people think?
I think the rehiring would be quick, because I think this exodus you saw of experienced lawyers leaving or being fired, a lot of those people would love to come back if they could, and I think they will do that quickly if given the chance. The harder problem, frankly, is between the Supreme Court and Congress. No one's really trying to make the Justice Department function properly anymore. And the harder, longer term project would be to get Congress to pass some of the types of laws that were passed in the post-Watergate era to preserve the prosecutorial discretion of the department. Because right now, prosecutorial discretion is being hit in the head with a bat every day, and it's being replaced in many ways by presidential decree. And that is a dangerous road for the department and the FBI to be going down. And that, I think, is a heavier lift, because that requires Congress to do something. And, I mean, Congress seems many days to look more like a corpse than a living body.
Yeah.
No, well, from my point, I can't thank you enough. And I mean, people should read this book, because the country can't be any stronger than the Justice Department is. I mean, that's what forces our laws. It just can't be any bigger deal than that.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. I wrote the book because I wanted people to think not about buildings or like justice with a capital J. I wanted people to think about lowercase justice, right and wrong, because that's what's at stake here.
Yes.
Well, everybody out there, I want you to go get it, the Department of Revenge. And if you have any discussion with neighbors or friends or people who disagree with you, this will give you all you need to know. Devlin, congratulations on this book, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, guys. Great to see you.
How important is making a switch to Mint Mobile for a more affordable mobile phone service, James?
Well, it's important if you like money. If you don't like money, don't do it. I mean, this stuff is cheaper and better than anything else you can get. So the question is, you like money? Good. Get this. You'll save.
When people hear that Mint Mobile plans are only $15 a month, a lot of people wonder, what's the catch? Well, after getting started with them, you'll see directly there isn't one. There are no gimmicks, no gotchas, just unlimited talk, text, and data with fast, reliable coverage on the nation's largest 5G network and an award-winning care team. So when you think about it, Mint Mobile is the true catch. After switching to Mint, there's been a clear signal and no pressure on time or data limits, and your kids will love that. Plus, it feels great seeing bigger numbers in everyone's bank accounts after the bills are paid. Mint Mobile took what's wrong with wireless and made it right with premium wireless for $15 a month. You can even bring your current phone and your number. Choose from 3, 6, or 12-month plans and say goodbye to a monthly bill. Now, you ought to ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile. It's so easy. Sign up online and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. The website is incredibly simple to navigate, and you can get down to business in no time. Get your kids and other family members using it also. Like you, they have more important things to do to spend their money on. Sometimes I don't want to know them. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/warroom. That's mintmobile.com/warroom. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/warroom. That's it. There's no catch, and the link is in our show notes. A $45 upfront payment is required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speeds slower above 40 GB on an unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Alina Bankhead, who won the Montana Democratic primary for the United States Senate, is impressive. Air Force veteran and good enough candidate to beat more experienced aspirants in the primary. In addition to a Republican, also running is Scott Bodner, a former president of the University of Montana, top of his class at West Point, Rhodes Scholar, and Green Beret commander. There's, a couple realities here. Bodner would have a chance in a head-to-head race against this very mediocre Republican. No chance, really, in a three-way race. Bankhead has no chance as a Democratic brand is too toxic. Two of the best Montana Democrats since Mike Mansfield retired a half-century ago, three-time U.S. Senator John Tester and two-time Governor Steve Bullock, both were trounced in the most recent Senate contest. The D brand is just too toxic. Bankhead has every right to stay in the race, but that would be tantamount to electing a MAGA-type Republican who got the nomination actually under rather dubious circumstances. Or she could bow out with a bright future ahead and help Montana have a shot at electing an Angus King type to the U.S. Senate.
Excellent point. So my outrage is this. Last week, I said that I thought Trump would resign next spring. And people said, oh, that's very clever. You got a lot of pickup. You like to say kind of crazy ass things and everything. I want to be very clear on something. I'm not doing this as a crazy ass prediction. I'm doing that because I genuinely think that he will resign next spring. And I'll assign my reasons. First of all, I'm not an MD. I'm not a geriatric. But I am going to be 82 this year. And his rate of decline from election day to now, it's not linear. You don't lose a 0.25% a month. When it goes down, it goes quickly. And you can look at him and see how just fat and unhealthy he is. Secondly, I have experience that not a lot of people have. I know what it's like to lose a massive off-year election we did in 1994. It's so monumental. It's so massive. It hurts so deep. You just can't imagine it. The entire world around him is going to change after November of this year. People don't pay attention to you. They're making jokes. Everybody knows you're on a short leash. You got two years left to go. You don't have any power. Everybody around you is being subpoenaed for everything that you can imagine. Your life is miserable. He doesn't have to stand. And Clinton came back because, frankly, it was the greatest mismatch maybe in American political history. Bill Clinton versus Newt Gingrich. Well, guess what? Donald Trump is not the Bill Clinton of 1995. All right. And Hakeem and the Democratic leadership and Schumer, they're not Newt Gingrich. And he is going, and I'm doubling down on this prediction. He is just going to walk away. He's going to go to J.D. Vance, and his lawyers are going to say, look, you can stay, you can pardon yourself. There's some uncertainty as to whether you can do that. There's no uncertainty as to whether a President Vance can pardon you and your family. So I'm sticking with my prediction, and it's based on something other than to try to be provocative and get people talking something. I think the son of a bitch is just going to walk away. Remember that song, Walk Away, Renee? That's what he's going to do. He's going to walk away because the pain that is coming for him, both the emotional pain and the physical deterioration, you watch it right in front of your eyes. I don't have to be a doctor to see this guy can't move. He can't get out of a chair. I know what it's like to be in the 80s. And unlike a lot of people, I know what that job is like. And it's not compatible. Maybe there's some people 80 could do that. He's not one.
Yeah. I totally agree. I'm not sure he's going to quit, but I'm totally sure he's not up to the job. There's no question of that.
I'm not just saying it.
Right. No, you're not. I mean, you say it privately, publicly. You say it from the
right. I do.
The mountaintops and from the valleys. So
there you go. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. What the fuck? Okay.
I like your batting average. James, in the social media age, how important is it to protect your personal data from being shared online?
As important as you think it is. If you have personal information and you want to keep it to yourself, it's really important. If you don't care for who knows your personal business or anything else, then don't worry about it.
Yeah, yeah. Because, the internet still is the Wild West and it's full of stalkers, scammers, and hackers. If you're smart, you should make sure you're protected, and it's easier than you think. Here's what you do: go to www.joindeleteme.com/war room and enter the code war room to get 20% off Delete Me. Delete Me removes your personal information that's being sold online, which is why you really need to get it. In the age of AI, we're all especially vulnerable to scammers using your personal data that's floating around on the internet against you. Have you ever Googled yourself and found your home address, phone number, or the name of a family member? It really is unsettling. And there's a lot worse out there. But the good news is Delete Me can help. Delete Me does all the hard work to wipe your personal information from data broker websites, and you can get an individual plan for a little over $8 a month. As public figures, we knew we could be targets for scammers and worse. But when we found out how many Americans are at risk, we wanted to fight back. With Delete Me, you'll feel so much better about your security. But more importantly, as family men, we know Delete Me is something that can help keep our loved ones safe. Join us and refuse to be a victim. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now, at a special discount for our listeners, get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to www.joindeleteme.com/war room and use the promo code war room at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to www.joindeleteme.com/war room and enter the code war room at checkout. That's www.joindeleteme.com/war room, and the code is war room. The link is in our show notes.
Protect your family online with Delete Me.
All right, now for our listener questions, James. Eric in Ojai, California says Donald Trump is sitting on a war chest of over $300 million, but he's only distributed $2 million so far, primarily on small-scale boosts and special elections. With the midterms approaching fast, what gives with his sudden alligator arms?
He's going to keep it for himself. Okay, I thank you for the question. I don't know where Ojai, California is, but it's a very good question. But the answer is quite simple. He doesn't have any intention of giving it away. He's going to keep it for himself,
Right.
and he's going to keep it for his kids. That's not the way that Trump thinks. He gets money, he keeps money. But good question. The answer is simple. He ain't giving it away. He's keeping it.
Right. Agnes in Chicago, Illinois says, with talk of AOC, is the country ready for a female president? Let me divide those up, Agnes. I don't think AOC will be the nominee or the next president. I think she is a formidable communicator and figure. The Democratic Party is not a left-wing party. Republicans love to paint Mondami and look at others, and they'll pick the New Washington mayor as a socialist. But the Democratic Party is a mainstream progressive party, and AOC will be a force, but she's not going to be that kind of a force. The country is ready for a female president if we put up a good candidate. We have not put up a good female candidate. And I don't know that that'll be the case in 2028 or 32, but I don't believe that the country automatically will they'll elect a black candidate. I think they would elect a Jewish candidate. They might elect a gay candidate, and they wouldn't elect a woman candidate. They do it in state houses, and I think with the right candidate, they do it in the national level too.
Well, also, Hillary lost because of a distributional fluke. And she carried the popular vote relatively easily. Right. And she had bad distribution, bad turnout. Harris did not lose because she was a female. She did not lose because she was a female of a non-white female. She lost because she was Biden saddled her with the status quo, and the country is looking for change. But I don't think that's why Vice President Harris lost. And the other thing is, this party will not and should not nominate people non-white, females, gay people, or even transgender people. We're going to do that, and we should do that. And I'm proud to be part of a political party that does do that. So I think a female could win easily. It's almost happened before. It kind of should have happened. But also, I don't think the party's going to care if we nominate a white male either. I think that the lust for winning is just get somebody that can win this goddamn thing, and we'll worry about everything else after.
Yeah, I think you're right. James, I'm going to give you one of the toughest questions. This is from Jeffrey in New Albany, Ohio. And I have to tell
I was just in New Albany.
Well, this is Jeffrey must have known that because he has asked you what I think will be the hardest question you've ever been asked. Which is worse, Jeffrey asked, a totally corrupt, autocratic, narcissistic president who thrives on chaos, or a Supreme Court that is 100% a wholly owned subsidiary of conservatives and Republicans?
You got a week? I think that the thing, the presidency can change pretty quick. It's obviously going to change in a little more 2.5 years. The Supreme Court, I go back and now I see that Pete Buttigieg, a very smart guy who said he had this idea that now he's for increasing the court size to 13. Remember, you heard it here first.
I did.
The way that you can fix it, and there's nothing to stop you from adding 4 more justices. And we're going to have to do that. It clearly, the people in there don't give stare decisis, jurisprudence, constant, legislative history. They don't give a shit about any of that. And people are starting to wake up to that. And they're going to continue to wake up to it. And I urge the next president, just from day one, just increase the goddamn thing to 13. Add Puerto Rico and D.C. as states. You can do all of that legislatively. You don't need a constitutional amendment. We got to fix this thing. Then we're going to have to fix the presidency. So that's just where we are.
Yeah. Mary in Alton, Illinois, asked, after Tuesday's California primary, the talk of election fraud started up again. How much of this can we expect in the November general election, specifically if James Tallarico wins in Texas? You're going to hear it every day. Virtually every charge will be bogus. Election fraud, election cheating is virtually non-existent. You can always find an example. Hell, I have an example of Amazon sending me, the wrong order. But that's rare, and election fraud is as rare. But to those people who say, well, we have this and that, let me just give you one fact. In 2017, Trump had been elected. He named a commission. It was headed by the vice president. They picked this guy from Kansas, Klobuchar, who's a big, election fraud guy. And they spent 9 months. You know what they concluded, James? There ain't much fraud. There really isn't. So, but you're going to hear it time and time again, because that's the only way they can claim that they're getting cheated and they have a shot at winning, and they're going to act on it. Whether it's sending in forces, whether it's impounding machines, and I just hope and pray that the Democrats are ready for that legally. I worry.
I concur 100%. I add something else. President Bush 43 appointed the same thing to look for fraud. They come back and couldn't find it.
Right.
It just sounds, elections in the United States, and in my experience working in 22 different countries, elections around the world are actually pretty honestly conducted. I've never seen an election result where I said, I just can't believe that. And it's really hard to rig a big election. I don't know how you would do it. You might be able to rig a precinct or two here, but if you have a precinct in Utah that comes back 80% Democratic, well, that's rigged. If you have a precinct in South LA that comes back 75% Republican, you can't get away with it.
But that almost never happens.
Right. It's harder than you think. Even if you try, it's really hard. It's almost impossible.
John this is our old pal in Gurnee, Illinois, says MAGA has the Epstein scandal, the horrible treatment of immigrants, Ken Paxton, attacks on the Pope, and Trump portraying himself as the risen Christ. The Dems have James Talarico, Josh Shapiro, Governor Bashir, Pete Buttigieg, and others who align their faith with public service. Have the Democrats become the new party of faith?
It could be. I mean, but Talarico is very devout. Governor Shapiro is very devout. Bashir. But to me, faith is one thing. If the Democratic policies are way more in line with biblical teaching, particularly New Testament teaching, particularly, you can easily say that the Democrats follow the teachings of one Jesus Christ exponentially more than Republicans do. Period.
Yeah.
And Jesus never weighed in on gay people, so we don't know. But he did weigh in on how you treat your neighbor, on treatment of the poor, all kinds of things like that. We know that. So I just will sit here and proclaim that the modern Democratic Party is significantly closer to the teachings of Jesus Christ than the modern Republican Party. Period. End of argument.
Jesus didn't say get those illegal immigrants and put them on a plane and send them to some rotten prison in El Salvador. I missed that, James.
It's all about how you treat your neighbor.
Right.
That's the whole idea. It's just do to other people what you want done to yourself, and no one would want to be deported and locked up and shackled and put in a prison.
Right.
It's that simple.
Al in Sterling, Illinois. This is the land of Lincoln questionnaires we're taking today, and they're all good ones. Says, what faith do you have in Trump and his minions being held accountable after the power shifts? My belief is that if these crimes are not addressed, the state of our country may suffer a wound we may never recover from. Al, you're onto something, and I think it starts with the Democrats taking over the House and possibly the Senate. The most important thing that they can do is have accountability forms to basically investigate, interrogate, try to reveal some of the outrages that have gone on, including the money scams. And then if a Democrat is elected president in 2029, a Democratic Justice Department, they're going to have to be selective. All of this should be out in the open. There may be some legal action taken. I worry about going overboard on that, not because there's not a case. God knows there's a case every day. But I just think the main thing to do is to be totally transparent and think in terms of something like the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
So you say there's a worry that you could go overboard and be too extreme. There's also a bigger worry that you don't do enough. Right. And people love the word accountability. That fine, whatever you want, but they're going to have to. I think they're going to have to pass ethics legislation.
Oh yeah.
I think that when all this is said and done, they're going to have to say, what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen again? And the kind of issue of ethics in government, it's kind of dissipated a little bit. And there's, Supreme Court has none. I don't know if Congress can impose anything like that. But boy, when you have the lack of ethics they have now, it just causes a deterioration in faith in things. And the Congress is going to have to do something. And I think the bigger danger, they're sure they could overshoot, but the bigger danger is they undershoot. Or the thing you never want to vote for a Democrat that says we shouldn't look back, we should just move forward. No, you got to look back.
Yep. All right, we're leaving the land of Lincoln to go to the land of the Jayhawks. David in Lawrence, Kansas, says, while reading the New York Times piece by Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan, I was reminded of James' observation a few weeks ago. The people in the Trump White House are leaking like crazy. What was your biggest takeaway from that article? And is the administration into a total leak job right now, James?
Don't trust anybody. They got tapes. Everybody in the administration is shitting all over you, and they're just getting warmed up. The other effect come after November is these people realize that their careers are, for all intents and purposes, gone. No one's going to want to hire anybody out of the Trump administration. And the way that you get right with history is start leaking. And you position yourself as the person that tried to tell it. That's the only future you have. Leak like a sieve, leak like a broken faucet, leak everywhere. You're already leaking. Everybody's leaking on you. Everybody's leaking on everybody else. Trust no one. That's my message to anybody that works in this administration. And I'll give you one piece of advice, Donald Trump, everybody is out for you, even your own people. Be scared. Be very afraid. That's
Your
what I
choice
really
is
believe.
the leaker or the leaky. It's that simple right now.
Yes.
I agree totally, James.
Leak or be leaked on. That's it. You can't get another choice.
We cleaned it up. Listen, we love those questions. If we didn't get to yours this week, send them back in. We'll try to get to them next week. We'll try to find another state that we honor as much as we did the land of Lincoln this time. And don't forget, by the way, to look in our show notes and look at our Send Them Back survey. Which Trump administration officials were the founding fathers have said send back to England? We want as many votes as we can get in this one. So thank you.